I think one of the most regrettable things since 9/11 has been the fact that we've all ended up going at the speed of Islam in theological discussion, in societal discussion, in moral discussion. And I think this is a great shame because whatever Islam can or cannot do, whatever the trajectory of Islam, should not really be of great concern to Britain, say. I mean, it's we can't have our own future spent endlessly debating the hadith. I mean, apart from anything else, they're not very good or interesting. Loads of them are about ridiculous stuff. I mean, I often say to people, I mean,
But
just
that's only
read.
because you don't speak Arabic. If you spoke
Yeah.
Arabic, then you'd appreciate the nuance.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. That's right. And all the hadith about what you do with urine on your trousers and semen. I mean, all of those are really, really great in Arabic, and it's just the English doesn't quite work. But but it's sort of it's not a very interesting discussion. I mean, Islam is quite interesting, but it's not that interesting. And I certainly don't want to spend my life, and don't want everyone else in my society and culture to spend their lives discussing Islam. I think as well, in most of the things I care about, Islam is just the slowest kid in the class. And we all end up speaking, certainly have done for the last 15 years, at the level of the slowest kid in the class. And I think it's sort of retarding our entire society's ability to discuss things. I mean, I don't want to talk about whether a woman should be judged in front of an all-male panel of imams in 21st century Britain. I don't want to be discussing. I don't want to be crawling over the Quranic or any other justifications for it. I just don't want it. I don't think it's a wise thing to do in a modern society. So there's that first of all. The second thing is that I think it's maybe Islam can reform. Maybe it's all going to go through a brilliant reformation process and so on. But maybe it won't. And I, for one, don't want my society's future to be predicated on a bet which is likely to be lost. I'd love it if the reformers, and I know, many reformists are Muslims, and I wish them well. I really do. I want them to win. But the history of Islam, as you well know, is that those guys often end up just all being killed, and the literalists win. And I think that's a tragedy for Islam, but it's not my tragedy. It's not my society. It's not my culture. Not my religion. And whilst wishing them well, I just don't want American society or British or Western European societies to be caught up in that. And I think that is what is happening as we speak. It's what's happening in our societies, as well as speaking at the level of the slowest kid in the class. We're all talking that language. We're all, every ethical discussion, every scientific discussion is becoming, tainted with this. And, all the artistic discussion. I mean, I'm very keen that people know about a lot about other cultures. I'm very keen for that. I like to, do it myself. I'm not a nativist sort of. I don't, I think that only only British food and British literature and British, and yeah, I don't think that. I think the world is very, very interesting, but I don't want the entire world's future to be spent discussing Islam. And it just worries me enormously that that is what is happening.
But then here's the
And
problem. Sorry to interject. If even though you may not be interested in Islam, Islam is mortally interested in you,
uh,
and therefore,
absolutely.
as the demographic realities change in the West, we can't simply say, you know what, we've had enough of discussing Islam.
No,
So there is going to be a head. Point at fork in the road, and so the question is, how do we handle that? Some, for example, have argued,
right.
and I actually raised this with Andrew McCarthy, who was a guest on my show. He was one of the federal prosecutors of the first
I know.
9/11.
Yeah.
You know who he is. He's a lawyer. He's I think, a constitutional expert. And I said, do you ever foresee a day when all of Islam, if not some elements of Islam that are problematic, might be rendered seditious? And there is a legal argument to be made that, to the extent that there are many elements of Islam that are simply, there's no way you could reconcile them with some of the liberal values that we hold dear and true, then that conversation is going to happen. And secondly, when it comes to, say, immigration, My position has always been everybody is welcome as long as we don't cede a single inch of our liberal values, not 1 inch. So you could come in if you're brown, purple, tall, short, fat, or thin, gay or not, as long as you abide by our values. If your beliefs, cultural or religious or others, are inconsistent with that, you're not welcome here. If they are consistent or you're willing to leave them at the door, come in, my brother, and let's live peacefully together. Do you ever foresee a time when politicians will be able to speak in this very clear manner? Because otherwise, it's going to be Beirut in 1975 all over the world.
That's a very it's a very disturbing question, but I think that's the way we're going. I have to say, not soon or anything, but look, my own view is that particularly in Europe, where obviously I know most about. I think we're missing the opportunity of a soft landing on this. You see, I've seen in recent years the possibility of having a sort of softer landing on it. Mainstream politicians tackling this. Mainstream politicians also, the importance of not doing certain things. Like the Home Secretary, who's the former Home Secretary, who's now our Prime Minister, Theresa May. Don't use your Conservative Party conference speech to talk about your favourite passages of the Quran. Just don't do that stuff. And it seems to me that for short-term political gain, people are still evading doing the things and avoiding doing the things they should be doing, and holding the lines that you quite rightly describe. And we're getting worse and worse at it. And it seems to me, and I've said this for many years, but that, out way to my side, and I think to yours, an answer to this of another kind grows. And this really worries me. I've said for a long time, if you've got a problem with the existing Muslim communities in your country, not that they're entirely a problem or all a problem, but if very significant problems seem to be coming from them, it doesn't make enormous sense to keep bringing in more people of that same background, because the problem will obviously grow, the proportion to the number of people grows. And this, for many years, has been a very controversial thing to say. I think it's a very obvious thing to say, but it's been a very controversial thing to say. I was saying, let's slow down, limit the immigration, and you can do something with the people who are here and in time, etc., etc. But now I find myself in this position where, the president-elect of the United States, said on the campaign, no Muslims should come into the US for a period. And I hear that and far more on the continent. And so I find myself feeling, like the sort of wet lefty liberal on some of this. And this, to put it at its frankest, this is very, very troubling. I don't think that everyone on the continent, in particular, who's opposed to mass immigration or anything like that, is a fascist. But far from it. But we really have to exercise enormous care. And I think because of the name calling and the lack of care and the cowardice and a whole set of other things, we're leaving this job to be done by people that we would not want to do it. And as I say, it's a hard landing will be the only resulting possibility, and that should trouble everybody.